Okay, so welcome to Lecture 2 of NRGY 243, and we are very lucky today to have the solar guy, Brad Van Wert, in from Bozeman. He's making a whistle-stop tour tonight in Missoula, but we're lucky enough to have him for lectures. So we're just going to kick it off with a few bits of information, and then we've got a few students with some questions. That's how we're going to roll for the next 20, 25 minutes. Okay, so Brad Van Wert, the solar guy.
Great. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
So yes, I am solar guy, and I'm on a whistle-stop tour around the state. And what we're doing is we're raising awareness to the solar electric industry and the opportunity at hand in this industry, because it's an incredibly dynamic industry and it's growing rapidly, and it's adding jobs, and jobs, U.S. jobs is at the forefront of everyone's mind. That's what we hear a lot about. And here we have an industry that's growing and it's creating jobs. We also have a regulatory environment here in Montana that isn't necessarily as friendly to our industry as it could be. We have some roadblocks towards growth. As I was discussing, there's a cap to the size of the system we can put on a meter, 50 kW. And so you guys know that 50 kW is the 50,000 watts of potential energy that all the solar panels combined can create.
Yep.
And that 50 kW number keeps a large portion of the commercial business out of the market. I have a lot of clients that would need 300 to 400 kW. I've had conversations with them, and they're like, sure, as soon as we can do it, we'll do it. And I like to kind of make the joke that, let's say you wanted to put a deck on your house, and the contractor showed up. He's like, I can only do the stairs right now, but as soon as they let me, I'll come back and I'll do the deck. Most people are going to be like, you know what, I'm going to wait until I can do the entire project. The reason that they're interested in doing those projects now is because we've seen a dramatic decline in the cost of goods. And by that we mean solar panels, inverters, racking, mostly the cost of panels has come down tremendously. And so therefore it's much more approachable. And when we talk about that, the costs have come down dramatically in the hard goods. So our hard costs have come down, and we still have soft costs associated with it, right? I mean, truck rolls, guys, time, that's all just labor. Those are costs that are going to be somewhat consistent across the board for years. And so that's why when we have a cap like this, it keeps the guys out of the game, because a large portion of the cost is that soft goods. And they're like, well, if you're already going to be here and I'm going to pay you to do all the permitting and all of that to get there, I'm going to wait until I can do the entire project. Now, additionally, we're looking at some bills that look to not only keep us in place, but actually bring us backwards. And there's one there's executive action happening on it today. It's Senate Bill 78, and they want to kind of dismantle net metering. Are you guys familiar with net metering?
Somewhat,
yeah.
So net metering is the policy that allows consumers to install self-generating solar electric systems on their home. And when they do so, what you're doing is you're just creating another source of power. So now you have a source of power at your property. And what's going to happen is, when the sun's shining and it's hitting that, the electrons get all excited. They want somewhere to go. We take the positive and the negative. We hook it up to a load, and boom, we have a place to go. And so it's high noon in July, and your solar array is cranking, and it goes into your house, it finds your refrigerator, finds the light that you left on, and then that's it. And it's all of a sudden creating more power than you need at that moment. Well, the additional electricity will flow through your meter and onto the grid. And when that happens, you get a credit for each kilowatt hour, and that's how we buy energy, is in kilowatt hours. And so right now we have a one-to-one trade. It's a debit and credit. There's no cash being pushed back and forth. But when we put on, they'll give us a credit. And then we come home at night, we flip our lights on, we start using those credits. Or if we're sizing a system for a homeowner to be net zero, we're looking to make sure that the solar panels on their roof create as much power as they need over the course of a year. Now again, here in Montana, southwest Montana where I operate, we have about 4.5 hours of peak production hours per day on the average. But yeah, that might not sound great, but that's actually the same as Florida, which is the sunshine state. And that's because, maybe in December we have 2.7, and then in June, July we have 7.6. So it comes to that 4.5 average. And so through net metering, what we can do is during those peak load times in the summer when we're not using it, but it's available, we push it onto the grid, and then the utility can use that power. And electricity is like water. It's going to flow to the easiest source, you know? So as soon as it goes through your grid, it's going to look for your neighbor's refrigerator. And so they're going to trade with us when it goes through there, and then they're going to sell it at full retail rate to your neighbor. And that's a fair deal right now, because Montanans are making an investment, and what they're saying is, I'm going to make a personal investment, and I'm going to take my burden off of the entire infrastructure. I'm going to take the 15,000 kilowatt hours I need every year. I'm going to make a private investment to take that off your grid. And then, if I'm producing more, I'm going to trade it with you and you can sell that. That's a fair deal. Well, they want to change that to some sort of structure that all of a sudden has the panels on your roof and the energy they're creating be marketed at the same rate as what the Columbia River Power Corporation sets a 90-day average. So all of a sudden, the 30 panels on your roof are the same as a hydroelectric dam. And what that would do is really hamstring us, because it is an investment. And here in Montana, it takes the better part of a decade to return on that investment. And so what that would do is that would forecast out that return so much further that people would say, you know, I want to do this, but, you know, that's a little bit more than I can feel comfortable with. So
when you say that, does it mean, so the hydro dam might be making electricity and selling it to Northwestern Energy, let's just say for 3 cents kilowatt hour, so that the 1-to-1 suddenly becomes a 1/2 to 1 or a 2 to 1, is that?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, instead of getting 1-to-1 when you push onto the grid, you push on, and they say, all right, we'll give you 3 cents for that, and then later that night you call for that energy, it comes back to your meter, and they charge you 11. And you know that.
And the hydroelectric dam obviously can push way more watts because they're not getting capped like residential people, so they're able to make money off of this, whereas a residential person wouldn't even be able to make their own bill back, or their cost of their system would be, you know, several more years than they're looking to invest in.
That's right. That's right.
Is that going to be voted on today?
Well, so the executive action through committee will happen today. There was a hearing last week. I went and testified, and we had some good response from people testifying and also, you know, reaching out.
Are they capping the energy company at the hydro dam as well? Do they have a cap for those guys, or are they just free to roam any energy they want, you know, as much energy as they can make to make the most money?
Yeah, as much as they, you know, the grid would need and call for.
But
yeah,
there's no cap for those guys.
No.
Interesting.
And so I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the legislature because I'd love to also talk about just like the opportunities and stuff, but it's an important part of the overall conversation of looking at this industry because it's an incredibly dynamic industry and it's got a lot of moving parts and pieces. And, you know, I think that it's important for anyone who's interested in pursuing a career in PV to understand that it's multifaceted and it behooves anyone involved in the industry, no matter what level you're at, whether you're an installer on the roof or a system designer or you're in wholesale and all of that, to understand these because we want to make sure that we're, as an industry, strong and understand ourselves and able to move forward at the pace that we are. And I like to joke around about, you know, this industry is strong. It's a locomotive and it's moving. And if we have regulatory policy here in Montana that is not friendly to it and tries to slow it down here in our state, this multinational industry is not going to look and be like, all right, guys, Montana doesn't want in on this, we're packing it up. We're calling this thing off. It's no good. And so what will end up happening is we'll end up playing catch up. And we don't want to do that because we have people that are interested here and we have people like myself who have a company and I'm adding jobs every year. And I'm looking for qualified people that have an understanding of it, and that's why a program like this is phenomenal. So that's what the Charge campaign is about, and that's what this solar guy presence is about going out and, you know, trying to make sure that the conversation about net metering, the conversation about the possibility of this industry is happening amongst Montanans, and it's not something that we read about on the 5th page of the paper after the decisions have been done and made.
And more education, I mean, never can be a bad thing because there's a lot of mystery that goes with solar panels. Yeah, I see them on my neighbor's roof, but I don't know what it's all about type of deal. So, I mean, going to talk to the people who are the consumers and give them a little more insight would be, you know, totally helpful. There's, like I said, a lot of questions floating around that nobody has the answer to.
That's just right, and that's why, you know, you guys learning about it one thing that I do in my business with my partners, we hold community events. And we invite people to come out and talk about it. And what we like to do is just what you're talking about, is like kind of debunk the myths, right? It's like we're just past the voodoo black magic part. You know, people are like, ooh, solar, that seems weird, you know? We're over that hump. I'm working with more and more ranchers and business owners that they get it. And I think that as you guys learn the technical about it, you know, having the ability to put that into layman's terms and instill confidence in people. Now, you know, what's amazing about Montana, and you guys are psyched to be here and learning it, is Montana is an incredibly challenging environment to do solar in. And I learned here on the job, and then when I went to get training on a national level, I realized that the solar integrators here in Montana are the best of the best. Because when we're doing our stringing, we have to string for negative 22 degrees in sunny and 106 degrees in sunny. And so when we're stringing there, like I'll talk to inverter manufacturers and they're like, you know, what's your max and min temps? I'm like, negative 40, 106. No, seriously. I'm dead serious. I've seen it both. And you know, so that gets us into really interesting and complex design concerns. And it makes for a really like just well-rounded and like capable integrator. And we have a lot of them here. And you know, the team that helped to put together the trailer that you guys use, I learned from those guys on the job. Connor and Orion are great guys, and you know, I learned a lot from those guys, and that's part of what showed me, you know, the brilliance of being in this environment to learn this trade. And I think that, you know, learning the trade is incredible because understanding the long division of, you know, getting to string lengths and getting to the idea of correct voltage windows and understanding what's going to get your system correct is important. And you got to know it inside and out. And once you know it inside and out, then it's important to start playing with the idea of the economics of solar. And so I bring this up because I do a handful of flat top ballasted 10-degree pitch commercial space roofs here in Montana.
So ballasted, no penetration?
No penetration, and you know, we'll get to a 10-degree pitch. And I often get into conversations with people about that because aren't they going to be covered in snow for 2.5 months a year? Yes, they are. Now, let's look at that same exact footprint of that roof. Let's say it's 180 feet long and 60 feet wide. Okay, if I use this model and I look at the economics of power density, then I determine, okay, I'm going to get my 50 kW up there, and over 12 months that 50 kW is going to push out 60,000 kilowatt hours of power. Then I can do the same math in that same space and go back to my December 21st SOHCAHTOA and get a 35-degree average, or a tilt rather, you know, and do my math. And all of a sudden I'm looking at the same roof space and I'm looking at the power density and what I can get out of that same space. And then you have to like do a really delicate dance between appropriate design and economic impact and see how you're going to get the most out of that roof. And that's really fun to do because I could probably, where I could get 50 kW in that space I'm talking about, I might be able to go to 35 degrees and I'd probably get about 28 kW in that same space. And then I'm going to run the economics on it and try to figure all of it out because again, remember we were talking about these soft costs. I already have guys there on the roof. And if I can install this other system and get more up there on a more attractive price per watt, then we're going to get more benefit of it. But you also never want to do an inappropriate design, and we see that sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, a ground mount where they did not account for the correct SOHCAHTOA angle, and you see 6 weeks a year for 3 hours a day that didn't need to be there. You see that inner row shading, and you're just like, oh. You know, why did that need to be? You know, and so it's part of what I love about being a solar contractor is all the moving parts and figuring out how they all best fit together. But it's so important to have the most solid, grounded understanding of the technical to be able to get to those points.
Speaking of that, so one of the things I mentioned to you on the phone, Brad, is that the final exam for 243 is taking the NAB Step Certificate of Knowledge. So pretty easy question. If you had a choice between someone who had passed their NAB Step and someone who hadn't, who would you hire?
I'm going to choose the NAB Step every time because, again, You know, and full disclosure, I'm not NAB Step certified. I am ready to take the test, but I came into this industry accidentally. I was asked to participate in the project because I had experience roofing, and so I was able to climb a ladder and feel comfortable on a roof. They needed a hand on deck. I put my hand on a solar panel and I saw the future. I saw opportunity, and so I dove headlong in, and I definitely put the cart before the horse because I just started. But then I made sure that I educated myself and then found as much opportunity as I could. And I have not had the opportunity. Now, that being said, the reason I talk about that, though, is because now, as a business owner, I get 10 resumes a week. I'm not even kidding. More than I can handle. People want in on this industry for reasons that I'm just talking about, right? They see opportunity. They see growth. They see a space. And so, therefore, anymore, it's going to be harder and harder to get into this industry. And so having a solid understanding, I mean, you know, I've worked with distributors who are selling me products, right? And some of them are NAB Step certified and some of them are not. And I will always go to the NAB Step certified distributor to talk to them, because when I'm putting forth ideas, like I was talking about, power density versus place versus sun angle versus time of day versus client's goals to try to get my most attractive pricing, I need somebody that can speak that language. And I need somebody that understands that they're not just selling me hard goods, they're selling me a comprehensive system, and they understand how it will work and why I need certain parts and pieces. And as we move forward and storage moves along, I mean, NAB Step has an incredible storage application to it, and I've studied the book, so, you know, I mean, like, the questions that they're going to ask, and we do quite a bit of off-grid work, you know, and figuring out how to size appropriately a battery bank, how to get to 3 days of autonomy for your person so that they have comfort knowing that, like, you designed a system that will take care of them. And then, when it hits the fan, because it does, I mean, these are power systems and there's going to be all types of things that happen, and they call you, you need to be able to have a solid understanding to not only be able to understand and troubleshoot what's wrong with the system, but if it's a remote system, to be able to translate that into terms to walk them through it, because they might be 75 miles away without power, you know? And you need to be able to say, okay, I need you to go into the Midnight Classic, I need you to hit the button 4 times on the right, scroll down, because there's a lot of programming and stuff, you know? And you need to understand what it is you're doing, you know?
So on that line, thanks for the personal story too. So a lot of the students that come through the Energy Tech program might be in their second or third careers, and you know, maybe their knees and backs aren't what they used to be, so they're not going to be the person up on the roof. And so within the industry, I mean, give me an idea of the sort of the different skill sets or job descriptions, and then on the tail end of that, I also want to know the importance of maybe getting like a NAB Step, as well as maybe becoming an electrician. A lot of my grads will go on to the IBEW as well. So maybe speak to the different roles that are played in an install.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the exciting opportunity is that there is a lot of different kind of subcategories in this field, and there's a lot of ways that you can get in it. It doesn't all have to be installing on the roof. And, you know, that's where a solid foundation is going to help, because system design is part of it. Permitting is a huge part of this. You know, permitting on every project is a huge part of that. And a lot of part of the permitting is to translate to the powers that be that the parts and pieces are all appropriately put together and will operate safely and effectively. And as far as, you know, what's interesting about this space, and then with the card-carrying electricians, is that electricians are classically trained to work with loads, things that will be asking for power. And as solar integrators, we create things that will be making power. And so it's funny, every time I work with my electrician, he talks from the meter into the property, whereas I talk from the panels to the inverter to the meter and that direction, because I'm following the electrons and he's following the electrons because he's used to them coming this way. Yeah. And so being able to translate that, a lot of these guys, they're not trained in PV, and they're not trained that much classically in DC. And we work with some high currents, you know, and some certainly high voltages. And, you know, we look at systems that we do some that are 1,000-volt systems, so we're stringing together 800-900 volts worth of electricity that we're going to be pushing around. And being able to understand it and communicate with electricians is important. Or if you're moving into the field with the goal of being an electrician, having this solid foundation of how a DC power system works and how that integrates into the grid is going to be, you know, of great value. And then, you know, further along in the industry, like I said, I mean, you can be working in so many capacities in this industry, from system design to installation, sales and marketing, or if you were to get into wholesale, you know, moving equipment around, things like that. And then, of course, there's also this whole kind of regulatory environment, and any industry that's growing the way this is creating space for people that are sharp enough to help get in there. And so much of it, I can't stress enough how much of it is being able to take all this information that you get and have such a solid understanding of it that you can then translate it into layman's terms to your clients or to regulatory boards or to permitting organizations or to partners on the project like electricians and things like that. I mean, I can't stress enough how important it is to know systems and the way they work well enough, and to really take it all the way to the source of that one panel, you know? I mean, I had a call the other day from an electrician friend of mine who I know who's worked on some of my projects, and he was hooking up a system that a builder had done. And the builder had somebody do up the plans for him, and he's like, dude, he's like, I gotta ask you, they're telling me to run number 1 copper off the roof. It is huge wire, right? I'm like, it's a 12-panel system. Well, the guy who designed it, he took it was 2 strings of 6. He took all 6 times the amperage, you know, so 8 times 6, he'd say it's 48 amps. I'm like, no, like, you know, like series versus parallel, like, you know, to get to those understandings and to have some tricks that you know how to do when you're looking at those things so that, you know, and you can also set people at ease there. So an electrician calls me, he's like, this is pushing 50 amps off the roof? I'm like, no. You know, we're pushing 16 amps off the roof. You know, yes, each one is 240 volts at 16 amps, you know, let's say they were, you know, 6 of their 40 volt nominal panels, you know. So you guys, are you familiar with what I'm talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one aspect that everyone takes is, so we'll take both AC and DC through a separate course, and we review it here, you know, parallel, series. And I'll just show you kind of where we are with the course, Brad.
Sure.
Sorry, the
I got
screen's so awkward here, but, you know, we kind of go through the brief history, have them just take a couple little introductory exams. Most of these are review. Each week we have a discussion forum, so, you know, sort of get in and talk about what's happening each week. We go right back to what solar radiation is, get, you know, watts per square meter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do some site survey and planning in week 3. These are basically week by week in a 15-week course.
Amazing.
Talk about, you know, what true south is versus magnetic south. We take them through the Solar Pathfinder, which I'm
This is awesome.
use. Some Google SketchUp, some Google Earth. Take them through the PV watts calculator, which I think is a good tool to trade. Yeah. System components, as you were talking about, you know, knowing the full system. Modules, arrays, cells, you know, from right from the cell up to the array, and they'll do a project.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a real one, sometimes it's one that's just, you know, running the numbers. Storage, so looking at batteries. Charge controllers if you're going off grid. Then we do inverters. Nice thing about the trailer we've got back here, we've got 3 types of inverters. You know,
Right, you have the Solar Edge,
Mm-hmm.
and then what else?
We've got the micro inverters, and then there's like a. Do you know the third type, Tim? It's like a DC.
Is it Schneider?
Let's see, we got the microinverters, and then the other three are all just regular grid ties, different brands. There's Savonius, there's I don't remember which ones. I'd have to look, see which ones are in there. But they are all grid tie, except for the one that's hooked into the batteries, and that's our simulated grid for those, so they can do the grid tie.
Sure.
But the idea is you could actually approach an older system and know what to do inside the trailer. So
That's awesome.
so with that, system sizing, talking about stringing. Here's we do some mechanical, integration. So you talked about penetration versus not. What do the wind loads look like? Electrical integration, so wire sizing right there. Then some permitting, inspection, and the commission, maintenance, troubleshooting, and of course the economic analysis, and they're ready for the exam. So, I mean, you tell me like what we might be missing in this course.
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you, looking at that, is you guys are sitting on pure gold here. I mean, this is the opportunity to learn all of this in an environment is incredible, because that's it right there. That's the game, I mean, and moving through all that, it's where are you guys at in that process? Where are we at this?
Well, we're week 2.
Okay.
Week 2.
Oh.
So they got their AC, they've got their DC. One other thing though, and this is what we don't have in this course, and which a few other people said that might be good to add to the program, would just be some salesmanship and some communication skills.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we put that in this course, but you obviously have the the language and some political
A little product
sound-offs.
and maybe where it's going with products, and what they're using and where they're going with it, because I think a lot of that might, we're learning the science behind it, but not what's on the ground right now.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, the name of a few systems that
Sure.
brand names and where it's going.
Okay.
Well, to that point though, and I can't stress this enough, like, that's going to be a natural progression, because learning it inside and out is what's going to allow you to then translate that to clients. And, I'll sit down at the kitchen table with a client, right? And I can tell them, I'm going to put 3 strings of panels on your roof. I'm going to put 33 panels up there. It's going to be three strings of 11. We're going to bring it down into an SMA 10,000, blah, 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 right?
All right.
Okay? I mean, right? Or I can tell them, electricity is like water. And right now you have one hose hooked up to your house. What we're going to do is we're going to hook up another hose to your house. And we're going to shut off the hose that you're paying for. And the hose from your roof is going to take care of what you need. Okay? But you need to understand how you're going to do that so clear, so that you can say that to them with confidence, and that you can set them at ease. And then when they start asking questions about hoses or water, you can pivot and you can read how they comprehend information, and then you can cater to that. And some of my clients will ask a lot of questions, and a lot of people love Google, and you'll get a lot of people that have got misinformation from Google. And you have to let them talk that out, and once they're done, you can say, that's what you know, and what I can do is tell you what I know. My experience installing hundreds of systems tells me that, this is what we're working with. But understanding it is the key. And that's why I say you're sitting on gold here, because, I've been doing this since 2009, and I still am stumped from time to time. Things come up that it's like, and I need to draw on my experience to problem solve that. You know what I mean? And when we're talking about, when you get into the mechanicals of racking and what you're going to choose to use and how you're going to attach it and why, and then, so I was talking about those ballasted systems that I do. They're just held onto the whole rooftop with just weight. I have to get that all structurally engineered, because buildings here, most buildings in Montana are designed right to the edge of our snow load. And they're like, this building is only sufficient for our max snow load and nothing else than that. And, you know, we actually had to go and kind of rebuild a roof from the inside a few years ago to be able to support that. So, you know, I get a little wordy here, Brad, so
That's good.
I just get
That's
excited.
perfect.
I
No,
mean,
that's perfect, yeah. That's good. So,
I love this industry because of all the moving parts. You know, it's like for me, what kept me involved and what got me so far along was the idea that for me, it doesn't become monotonous because sure, I might go out and do 15, 16, 7K resis every year, 7K residentials. And it's like, I can show up on site and I can look at the person's house, I can look at their bill and I'm like, all right, I know what I'm gonna do here, you know? And so like maybe that could lead towards monotony, but then all of a sudden I have regulatory concerns or I have, you know, storage capacity coming online. It's something brand new for me to learn about. It's so multifaceted that there's always something to keep your mind limber on. And there's always something to like, get really excited about. You
And
know?
that it's growing, it's changing, and so, you know, the monotony of today is probably not tomorrow since it is such a rapidly changing industry and legislators going to change one way or the other, and so, you know, adapting to a changing industry would keep you interested.
And it is. And what's amazing, so, I mean, I don't like to talk myself into a corner, but I'll just do it real quick. So this idea, right, you know, this is another thing that I love about this industry, okay? This idea that they're going to cut us off here, right, and push us into a corner and say, okay, we're going to kill net metering, which they're trying to do all over the country, right? And then I hear that, I read that, I lay in bed at night shivering, thinking, oh, and then I go to, you know, SPI, Solar Power International, the annual conference, and I step on the floor and I start talking to vendors. This industry is so strong and dynamic, and storage is coming along at such a rate that it's like, fine, push. Like, I dare you to push hard on this industry because it will push back. And we will go to a situation where everybody has enough storage on their wall, and it'll eventually be the size of that box, that the 18 additional kilowatt hours that they produce every day that they would push into the grid is going to go into their storage. And then they're going to come home at night and they're going to use it. And the utility is going to be like, man, we tried to like bust these guys up and they're stronger and faster than us. You know, that's the old guard, and they're operating in this old mentality and they're trying to protect it. And here's this vibrant, dynamic industry with more and more money coming into it. When I first started going to SPI, it was the tail end of Birkenstocks and Save the World. Now, the only green being talked about is dollar bills, okay? And if the net result of positive investment is a cleaner environment, then I think everybody's going to be winning, you know?
cool. All right, well, that's good timing. I'm going to stop the Camtasia and maybe let you guys talk a little bit more. I'm just going to do a little housekeeping on the Moodle shell and just make sure, you know, I'll put this lecture in there. So you've got your book? Okay, all right, well.
I'd like to give him a rundown of the CST.
Okay.
If that's possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll let you kill off.
Okay.
Contagion. Yeah.
Oh,
So
thank
one
you.
of the things we're
Thanks.
looking at-
Sorry if I jumped all over the
Not
place
at
there.
all, no, it's good.
So one of the things that we're looking at because of interacting with Northwest Energy, Orion, and